Hello everyone, this is Phantom2502 and welcome to an episode of Dyson Sphere Program. In this episode I'm going to try and showcase my 100% compact building automation setup. So today I'm going to showcase that. A reason why I'm doing this video is I've seen a few other videos on the subject and it seems like they're building automation like all over the place. Well, I have a very nice compact build that's does all your buildings 100% all in one spot. And for this game it's got maybe a little bit of spaghetti, but it's organized spaghetti, so it's not all over the place or very messy. It actually looks pretty neat and it doesn't use much space, so I'm going to showcase that today. Alright, let's load the game. Let's get started. Alright, so it's a 164-hour build. First, we'll just do an overview of this current build. So, this electric setup with the 12, what are these called? Wireless power towers. This is how you can optimize your regeneration. You can get 12 of them at the same time regenerating you. Alright, let's look at statistics. So, entire cluster, and just showcase how far I am at 164 hours. So we've got about 1094 universe matrix per minute at the moment. My current build can support about 1125 a minute, and gravity matrix 905.6 per minute. It's 900 with the rest of it going into research, and the extra is going into space warpers. But also same thing with the antimatters. 900 will be coming in to make white cubes. And the other part of the build that's end game is small carrier rockets. 164.6 a minute with 160 per minute being launched into space. If we look at power at this point in the game, Dyson Sphere, my first shell is about 90% complete. We're requesting 51 gigawatts and I'm only generating around 40.3, so 70% satisfaction. Here's the actual Dyson shell. 235,000 structure points, and I got about 200,000 complete, so you can see that being done right there. Let's see, as for actual power requirements for this planet, 13.1 gigawatts of generation capacity, 12.3 demand, so that's alright satisfaction. My secondary planet has about 2 gigawatts consumption. And then all the other other than the first two main planets, the rest of them are just little teeny tiny outposts for mining. So I'll look at the star map for that. My main outpost for silicon titaniums is 44 per Psi 4, and then for late game materials, my local neighborhood, the named stars have some of the materials. The unipolar magnets seem to only come from the neutron star and the black hole. I don't know if that's by design, so if you're looking for those in your game, try that. The rest of them did not have unipolar magnets. But some of the other things are coming from Kappa Lupi, Alpha Carinae, Gamma Pixidus, and these two things over here that aren't that pronounceable. But I started at 44 per Psi. Alright. Those are just little outposts. That's it. Okay. So, this is where I started my game with this iron node here. And let's get the building automation. Alright. So there's an overview of my compact building automation. So all these are doing buildings and storing them right beside them in one spot. 50 out of 51 of the buildings are automated all right here in this section. As you see, it's not taking up that much space. I have one main bus line for everything, and that's pretty much it. The only building that's not being automated here is solar panels, which is being automated on my silicon planet and then being brought here. but every single other building's all right in this spot. Alright. And then all the buildings are then being belted over to these interstellar planetary logistics. So that with space warpers, so if I'm building something somewhere else in the galaxy, all I have to do is build a interstellar logistics system, request whatever I need, and then put up a storage facility with logistics bots, and I can just receive anything from anywhere when I'm building from this planet and from this build. So I don't have to ever make any more automation for any more buildings at all. This setup will make it and can distribute it anywhere I am in the galaxy or in the cluster. So that's why all these lines are going into these interstellar stations from my buildings. I also have logistics hubs on top of each of these so that I can receive anything I want while on this planet. Alright, so let's just look at a overview of my current builds. So over here we have my white science cubes and my research being done. Mostly white cubes except for the ones that are closest by, which are doing research. White cube research at the beginning is where I start my research, and then once it builds out to do white, I switch it over from research to white and then build the research over here. But this column here would have been my original research. Alright, all this stuff is basic iron parts for the building automation. This expands out this way. And then out here is everything extra that requires kind of ironish to go into the building automation. So this helps support the building automation out here. This part of the builds. This part over here is my initial, well, I guess secondary power. My initial power is obviously with these windmills, and then I went over here and built up my coal power, which then became energetic graphite power. And then these things were oil with hydrogen, but then I used this recipe here, the oil refinery, to turn all of the oil into hydrogen. So, and then the extra energetic graphite goes into the power to the left, and then if there's any extra of that, it goes into more oil builds further over here, so that it doesn't back up. The hydrogen then does all the hydrogen for the buildings out of this setup here and this setup over here. The hydrogen for power gets turned into hydrogen fuel rods through this little bit here, and then that goes for the second line of power, all the hydrogen fuel rods. Deuterium fuel rods has a little bit of power here, and then my artificial star power, see this is more hydrogen, is the antimatter stuff over here. And I've got more antimatter to generate this amount of stars, but this is just my initial. And over here right now is all photon generation, but once you get to create your Dyson, not your Dyson shell, but your Dyson swarm, I do have these to originally get stuff from the power directly from the Dyson Sphere, then you kind of convert it over to do photon generation to create antimatter fuel rods for stars. It's more space efficient on the planet, because for critical photons with proliferated level 3, what are those, graviton lenses, you can get 480 megawatts per station instead of 60, which is an 8-fold increase. So without the stars it would take 8 times more space than this, and actually probably 16 times more space than this, because I've got another bunch of photons on the other pole just like this. So This is more space compact. Alright. Let's see, what's next? Next in the overview, off planet. This is my first time. When I do the first stuff off planet, I get titanium ingots, silicon ingots, microcrystalline components, and processors. I send it Proliferator Mark III. Well, originally it'd be Proliferator Mark II and then 3 from this planet. And that goes on to my secondary planet, and these 4 items are built off-world and then brought here for any of the building automation and the research, all in one spot. Let's see. Doing this rest of this automation with the buildings, you start with the blue, then red. But once you get to yellow, you can start doing the planetary logistics station setup. My building automation, I don't use really any planetary logistics except to receive, I think, titanium ingots. Reason being is I found that since your buildings aren't being run all the time, when oil and stuff back up with the building automation, it will affect your research automation oil as well. And I kind of didn't want that to happen, so I made sure my building automation was all belted rather than using the planetary logistics setup. But for after you start doing yellow research, having the research portion start doing the belt setup, and then having any extra red or yellow, or sorry, red or blue can be done in this research build. So this is just the research build. So as you see, we have oil set up here, and also returning all of the hydrogen, in this case all to refined oil, and then sending that out everywhere. The reason why I have this complicated setup from the original crude oil to refined oil setup is I found that things were backing up unevenly unless I prioritized the stuff that was coming from the hydrogen and crude oil from the original build into the refined oil immediately before I took it from the planetary logistics station. If I put it in a planetary logistics system because this had a demand for the sulfur instead of supply, it was really messing up my build, and so I had to kind of do this messed up setup to get there. If you have it in 2 different planetary logistics systems, and this can be supply rather than demand or storage, then it's not as much of an issue. Alright, so what's needed for yellow is a set of plastic, crystals, and up to yellow. And then on the other side, I have sulfuric acid, graphene, carbon nanotubes, prod bands, right to purple. And then I have green meet up from the other side with space warpers here, with the 2 different kinds of space warpers. And from green, you have the graviton lenses, strange matter. You got your deuterium being made. I do get some deuterium off of the... Once you get to this part of the later game, you don't have to make any hydrogen for this part, since you should have access to your gas giant after, and you can get hydrogen from your gas giant. It supplies tons of hydrogen. I think it's like 26,000 a minute right now, and even when I was kind of starting with it, it was like 15-20,000 a minute. Either way, I'm not using all of it. But deuterium, you get a little bit, but it's not enough for this build. I think it's only right now about 1,200 a minute. And when you start, it's more like 500. So in order to get the deuterium demands, I have to convert some of that hydrogen using this row of fractionators. Fractionator setup is very efficient for the fractionator. So each one is running at 7,200 a minute. Doing 2% because they're all level 3 spritzed with proliferator. So each one generates 144 a minute. It always has 7,200 a minute with this setup. So as you can see, I think this setup I do it a little bit better over here. So I put one thing in, put it through a stacker, a second one, put that through a stacker, and then have each one loop on itself. So when it does use one for deuterium, it gets filled up immediately with a full stack, and these have been running at a constant 7,200 a minute with this setup. No loss whatsoever. As you see down here, I do have a proliferator line, and this proliferator line is separate from my building automation proliferator line, and so I have one proliferator line for the research setup and one for the building automation setup. They both merge together in these two right here. So the building automation setup will come in and be prioritized to go out to the other planets, and then the building automation will do its thing, and any excess will then come in to add on to that, because the other planet setup will have the titanium ingots and stuff for both builds, the research and the building automation, and be shipped here. Alright, so the rest of the setup, as you see, I'm kind of going, I built my buildings like the other way, instead of being around the poles, going like up to the poles. The reason I did that is my original land for this build before I got foundations made it better for me to do it this way, and also where the resources were set up so I didn't hit really anything. But it's more efficient if you do it the other way instead of this way, going with the equator for each build. But it works out fine anyways, even if you're doing it this way. Alright, so here's everything for building automation. As you see, I've got my blue now being done out here. Initial blue and initial red will be done with the building automation, but it's not too much. I think it's like 50 blue and 50 red or something like that. Alright, this is everything that needs to be done for the green cubes, and here's the proliferator being made out here for all of this build. And the proliferator I'm using regular stacking. All the other ones I don't need to use this kind of automatic piling, because you can just send it into a planetary logistics system, and if you have a belt coming out, the planetary logistics system will auto stack it to the 4 stack count. So you don't have to do this messed up setup. The only thing is I didn't think about that, because proliferator level 1 and level 2 doesn't really go anywhere else, so I didn't have it going into the planetary logistics system, and I didn't want to like add another one, so I made this automatic piling build. And same thing with the level 3 logistics, that only goes into that interstellar one I showed you. But anyway, so yeah, that's where all the proliferator goes from. That would be the end of the build for the green cubes. And as you see, each row is expandable. They come right out from the planetary, get spritzed on the spritzed line with level 3 or whatever you have at the time. And each row, just as you build gets bigger and bigger, you just keep expanding each row and expanding the belt levels. And so this build is expandable, just add on as the game goes on. Alright, this part over here is once you start doing white cubes, you can do critical photons to antimatter. And then that sends a excess hydrogen line to the oil. And then once you have antimatter set up, there's a prioritized antimatter and hydrogen line, which gets spritzed with proliferator, which goes to making antimatter fuel rods. And that'll be prioritized. Alright, then this build is to make the small carrier rockets from the triangles onwards. The sails here, other than my initial solar sails that start with the building automation, the rest of them are done here. And you need some sails for this small carrier rocket. Each of these things is to make the small carrier rockets build setup. And the small carrier rockets are being done here. Then antimatter fuel rod is for late game power. So other than the one that I started with, where all the suns are, all the rest of them are being done here. Also, this is creating more than what I need for power, and that's being sent off world to power my outposts. I've got about 7 outposts late game, and that 7 outposts is then, instead of doing the default recipes, we're using the recipes which use the stuff that's not in the solar system items in the game, and this is the alternate recipes being made here. Since these are more resource efficient, or doesn't take as much of your initial resource. It especially saves a lot on oil because you can automate away. Sulfuric acid is done in lakes, so you don't need that. Graphene's done on its own with fire ice. Stalagmite stuff does carbon nanotubes, and then that can go into make proliferator level 3. Actually, proliferator level 3 isn't really efficient until you either have the fire ice or stalagmite set up. Doing it with oil, you might as well stay at level 2 for if you go in efficiency. But I wanted to be a little bit more completionist, so even with the default recipes, I still did level 3s. And then my off-world proliferated stuff comes in, I think, through these two interstellars. And I send out the space warpers as well from here. Here's my EM rail ejection for this world. So this is all the off-world outposts and other systems come in to this area. Alright, so that's the research build. That's what's creating my 900 cubes a minute for all my cubes, or an 1125 for white. This is my building automation oil setup for all the oil items for building automation. So this isn't using any planetary logistics stations because my building automation doesn't do that, but this is all the oil stuff for the building automation, and most of it is to do proliferator level 3. So you can do a little more compact if you're only going to do level 2 for buildings, and then you have to expand a few other things in the setup. So it's my expandable oil for my building automation, and I do have a proliferated line coming in here. Here's some extra energetic graphite that's needed for this build. This is where this will back up if power is lower. Anything energetic graphite that goes through power will come over here first, and then this will be the first to back up over here, because I don't want my power to be backed up or not being used because of flow. My initial water setup for my building automations over here. And then particle broadband for buildings is here. I think it's just one building setup that needs that particle broadband. This is my initial oil and my initial red cube setup. Although this oil build was not expandable, which is why I created the other oil further along. But this is where I have my initial crude oil and just want to get oil set up. Then here is my diamond and energetic graphite setup for my proliferators. Well, energetic graphite for the diamond for the proliferators. And this is my proliferator builds over here. And the proliferator builds comes in its first line down below. You can start with the level 1 being put onto this line, and then as you make level 2, level 3, this line, then you just move it from being level 1s to level 2s and level 2s to level 3s. And then this, so you don't have to redo your whole line when you upgrade. The line then comes in I spritz the proliferator with proliferated proliferator with this setup, so nothing goes through, gets proliferated, and then it comes into itself. And this goes everywhere in the game. This one splits off and goes towards all my oil setup, while this other one goes into all the building setup. Over here is my stone products, glass and stone brick automation, and my initial silicon builds, which you do need for manual stuff at the beginning, like when you're putting up spray coaters and stuff. It's good to have this, and building planetary logistics stations. But you just need one of those for manual building. Alright, so that's the overview. We're at 25 minutes, so then we're going to go into a little level of detail on well, how to set this up. Now, I think there's only one area I didn't showcase. We'll showcase that now. Small carrier rockets are all up here, being sent into space, and then this is more photon generation for critical photons up here. And when things came up and built and came near to the pole, especially the oil, I needed a lot of it for my research build, I started wrapping things around the pole. So this is how this part of the polar region looks like in this build. I still have about 35% of the planet that doesn't really have anything other than mining. As you can see over here. The things with mining lines, conveyor belts, are to do the building automation. So you need like a lot of extra iron coming in. So that's some extra iron from there. There's a bit of coal here for energetic graphite for the level 3 engines, which is done in this setup right here. This is an iron node over here, being extra iron for the iron stuff other than initial. And I got my initial copper node over here where my buildings are being automated. Right here. Alright, so we're going to go back to the initial iron node, and I'm going to show you how in detail how to get this set up for yourself. So the game basically starts here with your iron node. So I found this iron node with this seed, and I put that into storage, and then I left between my storage and starting to build my iron ingots and my magnets, I made a 5 wide space for my bus. So I wanted one bus to transport items between each of these lines if needed. And it's like what, 10 to 15 rows high or tall now. It doesn't start like this, but it's expandable. So, you know, it eventually goes up this high. And also, a lot of the items are being proliferated within this bus. As you see in this bus, you can see rows of proliferators in the bus. It just builds on top of each other. It looks very compact and messy now, but it expands pretty well. So with this initial iron ore setup, I squiggled it through because I knew I was going to put my proliferators right here, and then that's kind of uses the squiggle, which is why I kind of had it 5 wide to start with. Alright. And also, when you're at this part of the game, I think my frame rate's 13 frames per second, so sorry if it's not like a huge amount of frames. This is what you get with this build. It's mostly the Dyson Sphere drawing calculation that makes everything so slow. Alright, so here's your initial iron ingots and magnets, one on each side, and then you have room to expand all the way out in a row as far as it goes all the way to the pole. The only one I needed to double back on a little bit was the iron ingot, which I double back on the steel side, and there's space near the pole for that. Iron ingots, what you need the most of, it's like 14,000 something a minute to make sure all your buildings can be operating at 100% efficiency. As you see, all those 14,000 come on lines, all stacked, and come into this storage bin. And then everything comes out of this storage bin to go to all the buildings. Going into storage bins, I don't proliferate until after it's out. So as you see, all these lines of proliferators are on the output from that storage, and then they get proliferated and sent out. If there are some buildings for building automation that don't need to be proliferated, and that will be sent directly without going through the proliferator on separate lines. But these are all the proliferated lines, and as you see, very, very, very compact build. Alright, so we'll start on the magnet side, because there isn't much that magnets go into. Magnets go into magnetic coils with a copper ingot. So as you see, these ones have proliferator spritzers down here. and there's more on the stack as well. As for the stack, it just comes off the main line from the bottom, and then I kind of loop it, as you see up here, as high as I need to go and where those proliferators need to go. And I think it's coming in from my original further down. It's hard to tell because of how high these things are stacked, but this is the original transfer from the main line to the squiggle lines. And you see it's keeping up, so that's good. Alright, so once you get the magnetic coil, the other side of the build, and that's expandable as well, and I put that in 2 rows, expandable out. And then on this side, your original ingots are going to be done for gears. So there's going to be a 2-space line here of ingots. One side can be going into your steel, the other into your gears. And then gears get stored over here, your initial gears, from the other side. That's a 2-space line and into the gears. Yeah, so gears one side, then gears come down and then gets stored into here. And then the other side I can do steel, then steel comes back and then gets stored into right beside your ingots. And as you see, each of those are expandable as far as you need them. You just keep expanding and stacking any of the inputs. On this side is where you get circuit boards. For the circuit boards, these are only the circuit boards for the building automation. The circuit boards needed for processors or microcrystalline, that's done on the other world, not from here. So this is just the rest of the building automation. You only need 5 for the whole game for the building automation. So this is the only thing building done on this side of the bus. And as you can see, for each of the spritzed lines for the gears, the steel, and the circuit boards are all done in these 3 proliferator spritzers here in this tight space. All the lines are brought down and in and split appropriately. Also, my copper ingots get split off here to come down for this line, off the main copper ingot line. So in this initial setup, my copper ingot goes from the bus. It splits off, as you saw, to the circuit boards. This line goes and ends at the magnetic coils coming off the bus. And anything also that's needed for buildings will be split off this line. But the copper line, this is my second copper line because the first one's not enough, but the first one runs just underneath it. And you'll have to get that part set up with your copper. So my copper ingot builds is over here, and that's expandable as well, and it gets spritz per proliferator here and on this side here. And this is my initial copper setup. So now it has tons of belts going all over it. Alright, so that would be your initial material setup. You saw where I put my glass and my stone brick, and the glass and stone brick will be brought in with your proliferator line I put it right down the main bus, so it came right up the main bus for your buildings. Alright, so now we can actually go to our first row of building setup. So buildings are set up in 8 different rows, mostly built around common inputs and what the complexity of the building. Actually, before the building automation, with your circuit boards and magnetic coil, you can create your initial blue research, which in front of the circuit boards is where I put that, and that's your initial research. And then the initial research, the blue, originally goes into this stack of current whites, which would have been my initial actual research automation setup. I already went through the power automation where the coal was for that, so we're not going to review it. Right now we're going to go through my rows of building automation and how to get that set up. Okay, so this is what I call row 1. There's 14 buildings automated on this row, all using the same mostly all using the same 6 items. 13 out of 14 use these 6 columns. So each assembler can, a sorter going into the assembler can take things from 3 away. So I run 3 lines on each side, parallel, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3 on this side. And then as they need these items, I put them into the proper building automation. So the lines are, for your row 1, gear line, you want a circuit board line, a iron ingot line, and as you see, as you need more and more, you can just stack the lines with more and then bring it down as you need it. On the other side, I've got my magnetic coil line, my stone brick line, and my glass line. And that will automate all, like, pretty much all your initial buildings. 13 buildings get automated just with those things, and that's what's going to be in row 1. As for the outputs, so the outputs, since there's going to be, even as tightly built as you make your assemblers, there will be a gap if you're near the equator. You can't actually put the buildings any closer, and in that gap is where you'll put the output, and the output would then go over the 3 lines to the other side where I put the storage. And any storage which is upgradable, like conveyor belts or sorters, as you can see, level 2s and level 3s are in the same line, and that way you can take your outputs out of here and then do another bridge to be the extra inputs into the next one, and then so on. So that will go upgradable in this direction. If it's a building resource that needs to be made for another building, it will get its stuff going this way. If it's resources for the rest of the game, it will be lines going this way in 3s instead of 1s. Alright, so your row 1 automation is going to be conveyors, sorters, assembler Mark 1, all Mark 1 sorter and conveyors, Tesla towers, the wind turbine, your what is this, arc smelter, your storage Mark 1, your fluid storage, your research buildings, your miners, your thermal power plants, your splitters, and your traffic monitors. There's one other building I put on this row which uses 3 out of 4 of the items as a chemical plant. The 4th one is a steel line, which steel line is used for these 2 buildings back here, your foundations and your storage Mark 2s, which I have being built here, and here right beside the gear storage. And that uses your stone brick is split off to come over here from the main bus line, and your steel that comes out of here will get spritzed with proliferator and then put into these 2. Also, there is an extra sorter Mark 1. That's for once you get sorter Mark 3 and want everything fully 100% operational. It does need a second line so they have an overflow of every item. So that second one's being done here, and then it'll be brought back, or its line will meet up with the other sorter line, twisted back over. Since it only needs circuit boards and ingots, which are in these part 3 of the line, I can easily bring it to this side. Also, for the rest of the row, alright, for the rest of the row it's mostly level 1 engines, and I'll get to that in a second. So the steel ingots, then I have coming up on a layer up here to go to the chemical plants before it goes to higher level items. So chemical plant setup's a little bit different because of the steel requirement. Alright, and I'll show how that's set up if we can see it. So the steel line comes in here, you can see it there. So I bring it along the side here as the input. It comes down, it might take a little bit to get this set up, but it comes down, only comes down for one block, comes over, and then goes back out. And then the output is actually underneath it on a lower line. My guy's in the way. I don't know if we can see that. It's how tight it is. Alright, so as you see, the output goes below it here and then goes on a bridge over. But yeah, that's how tightly that is set up. So in that time, the steel goes up one to allow you to have the output below it. Alright, so that's how that's set up. Now, items that are further over here, as you see, I have another line of storage bins, and these are for more advanced items that are needed for more advanced rows of the build. Each of these starts its build here, and then its rows are completely expandable to the poles. You also have, I think, a two line bus on this side and a one line bus on this side. Also, the proliferator runs through here and proliferates these items. So some of these items will come from here and then go down the building lines. These advanced items. I also have an extra copper ingot line that comes out and comes in here for these, particle combiners. But anyways, you start it with your level 1. So your level 1 is going to be, so each of these things, we're done with our row 1, which is all our initial buildings. These things here at the end of row 1 are going to be used to create our row 2 buildings. And then our row 2 items will do our row 3 buildings, etc. So our row, to do our row 2, our items that we need here are triangles and our engine level 1s. As here, our engine level 1s, I use some extra space over here from the gear storage line. Also, here's the gear 1. I have a little section over here for energetic graphite for the level 3 engines in this area. And then once I don't need any more triangles, just a double line of engines level 1s. And that's the engine level 1s over here. And as you see, the steel ends over here too. That's the coal center for my energetic graphite. And as you can see over here, I double back a little bit on my iron ingots. But basically, I still do the 3 lines on each side item and set it up for each individual item. And if anything needs to be switched around, that's done in the 3-lane bus and then set up for what this side needs versus what this side needs. Alright, but a lot of it's the same stuff, so like the gears and stuff, you already have that coming in from your row 1, and the glass just needs to be shoved over for the triangles. Alright, the only other item you need for row 2 items is these plasma exciters. So I built that with my row 2 on this side because this is very limited. It's only used for buildings. It's not needed to be expandable. You only need these 7 assemblers, and maybe not even that because you could upgrade the assemblers. So that's why I have it on this left side. I had a little extra space on top of the buildings because there's not as many row 2 buildings as there is row 1 buildings. Alright, so then your row 2 buildings. As you see from here, I have the 3 rows on each side again, but I have an extra row after each row's storage to put Tesla towers, because you do need to have everything powered, and so really each row's build is has 6 lines plus a line for towers and the building and the storage. Alright, so your row 2, I guess we'll start on what's on the lines. So bottom line over here is the what is it? Iron ingots, and that will be brought in from one of the row 1 lines and then brought up one of these to down here. We also have our level 1 engines, which are brought in as well on top of it. We have the proliferated version and non-proliferated version, because some of these, any upgradable building doesn't need things proliferated, because we're only proliferating things that can do the extra products. Anything that's only can do production speed up, there's no point, because we don't need the extra building production. Alright, second row is steel. Third row is magnetic coils. Fourth row is stone brick. Fifth row is circuit boards. And the sixth row is plasma exciters. Alright. So the buildings being made with this is your fractionator. Now, as you see, we are in row 2 bringing in processors and microcrystalline components. I think processors for the fractionator and the logistics distributor, and microcrystalline component only comes in for the spray coater in this row, and this will come in through, as you see, through that side. The output for this stuff is one below, similar to how I had that steel set up, and then this goes over here, and I was able to like bridge this over so that the processor could come in. So we will build these. Originally you won't have the processors or the microcrystalline until you get your off-world initial setup, but the rest of the buildings in this row, we leave space in this row because they need a lot of these other items, so that's why they're in row 2 and not row 3. Better setup, especially if they need a plasma exciter, because no other row needs plasma exciters. Okay, you have your oil extractor, your refinery in row 2, oil refinery, your spray coater, microcrystalline will come in from another from your outside location to come in here. Your thrusters, you see I have that one upgraded because of how it flows. The thrusters will flow into the logistics. Then I have my wireless power towers. See, it only needs production speed up, and this is why these ones are not split. So I have non-proliferated lines going into things here. So those are separate running. Some of these lines are proliferated, some are not proliferated, so that I can do the Tesla tower correctly. And I see the initial Tesla tower will come up and bridge over and then go in. Alright. Then water pumps. Water pumps then has a copper line coming in. As you see, I have a copper line coming in instead of the steel line. Once the steel is done over here with the thruster, the copper line ends. And then steel goes somewhere else. And then water pump needs that copper as well, and that's the end of the iron ingot line. As you see, it's the only thing that needs a spritzed engines, level 1, and then non-spritz engines then come in for the only thing it goes to, well, which is the sorter. So sorter Mark II is here, and then conveyor Mark II. Now conveyor Mark II is a little bit of an exception because it needs a level 2 engine instead of the level 3, instead of the level 1 engine, which is supposed to be on row 2 items. That's why I have the conveyors on the end here. I didn't want to leave a gap, so what I do is, since level 2 motors is a row 3 item, at the end of row 3 I'll back paste that to come in and put into here. Alright, so that's the end of your row 2, and then you put that into storage. So then that's everything row 1 and row 2. Alright, so then at the end of your row 2 you'll have your items needed to create your row 3. So your items to create your row 3 are going to be your level 2 engines, which use the level 1 engine. Level 1 engine gets put into storage, and then it goes through a proliferator. I think the proliferators are here for that. this proliferates your level 1 engines and your triangles, and then brings them back so that they can go for these items. So that's your level 2 engines, and then that just keeps going out. And your plasma photon combiners. And that goes in here, in these lines. Alright, those are the only items you need to create your row 3. Row 3 for over on, like with the extra space, is where I put my initial solar sails. Solar sails is graphene and the photon thing. Graphene, anything oil I saw earlier from my oil lines, that will be brought in through the main bus and through the oil bus, and then brought down here for these items. So anything row 3 and further may need some oil items. It's not just your initial stuff, your initial stone, iron, copper build. Alright, but that's some initial solar sails, and these are good enough for the initial power at this point in the game once you get row 3 set up. Before going off world, usually I get my conveyor level 3 and sorter 3 set up with a little bit of level 3 engines for the sorter. Once I get those two set up, then I go off world and set up my microcrystalline, my processors, etc. For the building automation, and then that's set up over here, as we saw earlier, into this this logistics station. In my EM, my solar cells go into these EM ejectors here. So yeah, these off-world things will come in here, come into this storage, and then I have them lined up to go through here. And actually this proliferated line does go through here, and each of the off-world things gets proliferated down below over here. There's a line of proliferators, and they're proliferating all the off-world items that need to be proliferated. There's a few lines that don't need to be proliferated, and then I bus them back through my bus, and then bring them off into the rows that they're needed. As you see, microcrystalline and proliferator were brought back because they're row 3 items instead of row 2. So for the row 2 items, I brought lines back from row 3. Alright, so your row 3 setup. And then once you're back from off-world is where you can start getting your solar sails. Initials of that mixed up, and then that'll bring your power up. But anyways, your row 3, you're looking at graphene. What's underneath that, because that's not it. Graphene, steel, processors. As you see, I'm running a what is that? Sulfuric acid line. That is for later down the line, not for the buildings. But anyways, there is a proliferator line. Oh yeah, it's on the other side. Okay, there's no 5th line. There's 6th line. There's only 5 lines for this level. I don't even think the photon thing, the particle thing is for here. I think it's for the other side. Yeah, so yeah, if your processor line, your level 2 engine line, and is there only 4 lines? I think this extra line has like other things, like okay, so here's a few things being brought in. Yeah, so it's iron ingots is the 3rd line down here. Yeah, all right. And what you can build with that is your level 3 items. So you have your level 3 conveyors, your level 3 sorters, your level 2 assemblers. And the reason I have that on row 3 instead of row 2 is because of the advanced items like graphene and processors. Basically, I will skip over the water pump with the assembler line and bring it in on the side. You have your logistics drone, which takes the thrusters from row 2. And that thruster line will come up, squiggle over, and then come back down. And the only other thing that's a row 3 item is the logistics bot. And that will create all of your row 3 items. Row 3 items still have on-world stuff, except for the processors. Alright, to create row 4, you're going to have your row 3 engines. Oh, obviously, row 3 conveyor has the level 3, but all the other level 3 stuff is going to be, level 3 engine stuff is going to be row 4. So one of the main things for row 4 is a super magnetic ring, or I call them level 3 engines. And you have these particle containers, and those things are expandable out here. And then that is your main items for your row 4. Your row 4, you need a little extra build of these accumulators, so that's done in this section. And also titanium ingots from off-world is another main item for row 4 buildings. Okay, so row 4, I think I have the level 3 engines, I have the particle in 1. What's down here? More processors in row 4. And then on the other side, I've got the plasma exciters. What is that? Silicon ingots. And the other line seems to be a bit empty. Looks like gears. Yeah, gears. And you see there's also some copper ingot coming in too. Alright. As you get more to row 5 and further, it's going to be a lot of mixed lines rather than being like 6 things only. You kind of bring things in and out as they're needed. So row 4, you get your planetary logistics station automation set up, and that'll be in front of the conveyors because that's also upgradable for rows 5 and 6. Your geothermal power station, your automatic piler, your EM rail ejector, and your ray receiver. And you'll be doing this just after you get your yellow research setup. So when you go off-world, you can do the yellow research setup over here as well, and bring your processors in, and the titanium ingots and stuff will be split off for research and building automation down here. Once you get that set up, you start doing the rest of your row 3. You can do then your row 4. I think we also do row 5 before we do purple. Or no, I think row 4. Once you're done row 4, after row 4, that's when you'll do the purple build. And then you do row 5, row 6. After row 6, I think then you do the green build, and then you do row 7, and then do the white build for research. And then row 8 will be after your white build. And that's when you start your Dyson shell build with row 8. Alright. So that's done for row 4. So then over here we build our items that we need for row 5, and our items needed for row 5 are our titanium ingots, and that sulfuric acid line we saw coming in a while ago goes down here for the titanium ingots. That line is coming directly from our oil stuff that I showed off earlier. I didn't go into too much detail with the oil stuff, but it was pretty easily lined up, so it shouldn't need too much detail. Also, going in for row 5 will be our crystal silicon, and those will be the 2 main items for row 5. Row 5 items, and this is done after purple research builds, is you have filled up accumulators, and I've stored them over here. You have reinforced thrusters. Basically that's what you do with the rest of this row. You have a few different ones of those. multiple of those. Those are our limited expandable items. And then our unique ones, we have our mini fusion power plants. As for what comes on each side, it's still 3 and 3 setup, but they're going to be a lot more unique at this point, so you just in and out belts as you need them for what items these things need. But the main things that they're going to need are going to be titanium ingots for the most part. Alright, so yeah, reinforced thruster. You have your mini fusion power plant, that's where you get the fusion power setup at this point as well. You have your energy exchanger automation and your interstellar logistics station automation, and that's the only one that's, I think, upgradable, and that comes from the planetary and then over to the interstellar for row 5. Alright, row 6, 7, and 8, instead of being, as you see, this is the end of my bus line after row 5, and then my research build starts right after that. Row 6, 7, and 8 are on the other side of the 5-line bus and go backwards. So they'll go up to row 5 and then go back down row 6, row 7, row 8, and then row 8 ended up ending right at my research build, which eventually turned into my white research. So it actually space-wise worked out quite well. Alright, so row 6 is next, and as for the belts for row 6, again, wherever you can do them, these things are different items, but this is just a lot of the advanced setup. The main item in row 6 is expandable out here, and it's anything really needing this frame material will be your main item for row 6. And this will be done after the purple build, purple research. Row 5 and row 6 after you're done purple research, which I showed where the research stuff is earlier, which just you keep expanding out that way. All right, so building automation for row 6, you have your orbital collectors, which take your interstellars. You have your logistics vessels, your satellite substation, and your miniature particle collider. And I'll finish row 6. Items then needed for row 7. So basically after row 6 you can build your green research. Row 7 will be post green research, and row 7 needs like later game items that need that I couldn't build on the other side. It needs actually its own setup, row 7. So for row 7 items, which are vertical launching silo, the assembly machine Mark III, and the quantum chemical plant. These need your quantum chips to be set up, which I have set up over here. Your titanium glass setup, which I have over here. It needs a plane filter setup over here, a Casimir crystal setup over here, which its hydrogen will be done with the hydrogen stuff I showed earlier. Plane filters get expanded through here. You actually need quite a bit of plane filters, so I pretty much just put them in any space that I needed to over here. It also needs the little fractionator set up here for deuterium. So some of the hydrogen comes into these deuteriums here. It needs the strange matter to be set up for row 7, and your graviton lenses to be set up for row 7. Excess graviton lenses from the building stuff can go into the photon generation up here after. And I think it's actually even put into this logistics station up here to be sent out if there's extra. Alright. So So all that is for row 7. The other thing for row 7 setup is you need some water for the titanium glass. And I have a little bit of water set up here just for that. That's just for the titanium glass. The particle broadband is also needed for row 7, and that's done over here with the oil. I had a little bit of space there. Yeah, but you can also see the oil bus from over here. So all the oil lines like the graphene and carbon nanotubes and stuff like that come down the oil bus line, and as you see, the oil bus line comes over here and then merges into the regular line. Also, initial red cubes does as well. And initial red and blue cubes have a merge right near the white cube. As you see, the research lines do come in over here, including blue as well, which you don't really see, but there's a blue line in there as well. And as you see, the research lines come in from an interstellar station here. Obviously, except yellow, which doesn't need a station, which is because it's local. Alright, so all those building setups that I showed there are done for just to get your row 7 done. Alright, once you're done row 7, get your green research up online. And then once you have your green research online, you can come and do row 8. Do row 8, you have your artificial star, and that's what I would start with. To do the artificial star, you will need your annihilation constraint sphere build, and that's what's done over here. And once you get the artificial star set up, that's when you'll get your initial antimatter setup, which I have all the way over here. So this will turn this row of photon generation, that'll be the only photon generation at first. That'll turn them into antimatter, and then turn into antimatter fuel rods down here. And then you can create your initial suns. And also create your initial stack so you can put fuel into yourself of antimatter, since that's the best fuel in the game for yourself. On top of that automation, you're then able to start doing outposts in other systems, because row 8, the 2 other items need off-world material, off-system materials. So once you get that set up, you can create stars on those systems to power outposts. And what's needed, the rest of row 8 is your advanced mining machine. It needs off-system optical grading crystal, and that's not what I want. And your plane smelters, which need unipolar magnets off-world. So this will be your first off-world items. As for those off-world items, I wrap them around. They come through an interstellar. Hold on, I'll show you where they come in. So I do have one planetary logistics station out here. This has those 2 items with the antimatter, because after you're done row 8, you'll do after row 7 you do white research, so your antimatter will come in, and your titanium ingots will come in here to be sent into the oil stuff that needs titanium ingots. And this one over here, this planetary logistics station, has where I send antimatter. I get some critical photons, need graviton lenses, and I'm supplying those. And there's some oil over here, which is being diverted. Any excess oil out of this system comes back up here. Alright, I already showed, I think, that interstellar. Oh yeah, that's the other building in the game. So the other building in the game, the solar panels will come in here and then get built as well. The only thing I don't have set up is how to get solar panels to the rest of the galaxy, because this is an input solar panel. I guess I can create one more interstellar station to do that. This is water for my research builds. And I have a few other interstellars out here. This is main items in this system that are being sent elsewhere. I think my second planet needs some copper. Later on, it needs copper. This one sends small carrier rockets. Later in the game, I can take my small carrier rocket build from here and send it anywhere in the universe to build Dyson spheres anywhere else. Same with the solar panels. Antimatter is then being sent out to all my outposts here, and then this is where I get my optical grade crystal and unipolar magnet from off-world. I showed off my other two interstellars over here already. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the entire build. So thank you for watching. Hopefully this inspires you to be able to create your own expandable building automation that's nice and compact, like I have it. And it's nice near the beginning before you get your logistics spots, because like getting anything you want is all in this one small footprint location. It's not all over the place. And that's a really nice part. And what's nice about this build is everything that you need to expand is easily expandable, and you just keep adding on to the row as you need it. So it was very easy to expand. I didn't have to tear down anything and rebuild from scratch. It's very easily expandable from the beginning of the game, and I think I kind of showcased that. Anyway, I'm Phantom 2502, and thank you everyone for watching. I'll probably make another Dyson Sphere Program video in the future, showcasing things, research when I'm further along in the build. Anyway, Phantom 2502, see you next time. Bye bye.